Welcome everybody to the brief video on organization. Now, there is reading from the handbook, which I hope that you have already read. And if not, maybe you have it open while you watch this video and that you look it over and go back to it if you need help. All right. So basically, the concept of organization is you want your paper to make sense. You don't want everything to be disjointed. You want everything to flow together and make sense. You don't want to just say, I was forced to read text number 1. I was forced to read text number 2. I don't see any connections between them, but here's a paper. You want to make sure that you understand that these things make a connection and that you are coming up with an argument, not a book report. A book report just tells everybody that you read text number 1 and that you read text number 2, and that text number 1 and text number 2 might have things in common, or that text number 1 and text number 2 might have things that are not in common. That's a book report, and that's not what college level writing is. So this section on organization will help to refine your ideas about how to really set up an argument, right? The argument is based on your understanding of how the texts work together. Your introductory paragraph, the very first paragraph that you have, it presents some important elements of your paper. It's kind of like a roadmap for the whole paper. It tells us who your authors are and what the text titles are. It kind of illustrates what they're talking about as far as what you need them to be talking about. And then it ends with your thesis statement, not sentence, statement, at least 3 lines of the what, so what, now what. That's the end of your introduction paragraph. But your introduction, it tells your reader, who are we talking about? What did they do? What are they talking about? And how does what they talk about relate to what you're talking about? Okay? That's the point of the introduction paragraph. And you want to make sure that you illustrate that you know what they're saying and how what they're saying helps you to say what you're saying on your own. Not repeating them, but what you're arguing. I'll have an example of that. And actually, this handbook section has some pretty good examples in it. So I highly recommend that you take a look, obviously, at the examples in here, because it'll really help. And then I want you to do more than just simply repeat things. I'm not looking for a book report. I'm looking for an argument, and an argument that you came up with, not that David Foster Wallace came up with, or not an argument that Garnett Cottigan came up with, but what you came up with. Your own idea that you're arguing, and you're using the texts and their quotes and how they connect to make your argument. Now, the first several pages of the handbook are important. I'm not saying that they're not important. What I'm saying is you need to really look at this because it's like an organizational flow chart. It has little boxes in it. It tells you like what makes a good intro, what makes a good body paragraph. They're very helpful. And it kind of gives you a step-by-step booklet or guidelines on how to really do this, how to discuss readings within the context of a paper. It's very helpful. And it goes through the opening paragraph all the way through, all the way to the conclusion, which we'll get to in a little while. But the opening or the intro paragraph, your thesis is always at the end of that paragraph. Your thesis statement, which is multiple sentences long, is always at the end of your introduction paragraph. And you never, ever use quotes in an introduction paragraph. Never use quotes. You just are basically showing your reader who we're talking about, what we're talking about, what are they talking about, and what are you talking about. So you want to set this stuff up. You want to set up the who and the what, and then you want to pivot all of that introductory information into, so here's the issue or the problem or the idea that we're going to focus on. And then you have at the end of that paragraph your thesis, which illustrates that there is a problem. This is why the problem is important. And this is what we're going to do to fix it. And your entire paper then works to hit those three things: hit the problem, hit why it's important, and hit what we can do to fix it. Okay? That's the introduction in a nutshell. But of course, there's a little bit more information. Please read through the handbook, and it really goes all the way up to about page 49, give or take. So you have several pages of introductory information. And on the last page, on page 49, oh man, on page 49, they have a great example. Oh, I think that you need to take a look at that example. It's really helpful. All right, and then on the next page, on page 50, it's not an example, but it's kind of a scaffold. It's kind of a model or a frame of what goes into a good paragraph. Now, you already know what goes into a good paragraph. Remember the formula, the fit-it method that includes the 3 I's. Focus sentence, introducing, integrating your quote, interpreting the quote, and tying it to the next quote, which you introduce, integrate, and interpret. And then you tie those things together back to your argument, to this idea that is kind of solidifying everything. And then you transition into another paragraph. On page 50, it literally kind of writes this out. It's not an example of student writing. It is literally like, this is what you do here. This is what you do here. This is what you do here. All in a paragraph form so that you can see in your head, like visually, this is what the paragraph will look like. And this is where the things that I want to do will go. Very helpful when it comes to writing a paper. Again, I hate saying that writing at this level is formulaic, but it's really formulaic. The next several pages is ways of tying your ideas to the ideas of the authors. How do the authors' ideas come together? How do they tie to you? And there's ways of doing that with nice wording, transitional phrases and stuff. Look at the boxes. They're very helpful. They're very helpful. Okay. Now, I want to make sure that everyone also pays attention to page number 53, 53. All right. It talks about topic sentences, which we have been calling with the fit-it method, focal sentences. You want your focal sentences to all tie together. And as this is the organizational section, you want them to tie together in a logical flowing pattern. So the first sentence, the focus sentence, the topic sentence of your connecting or body paragraphs, they all introduce an idea that we're going to be exploring in this paragraph. So your first body paragraph introduces this idea that we explore, and you back up using information, direct quotes from both texts, and you tie it back to your argument. And then in body paragraph number 2, your second focal paragraph, or your second focal sentence or topic sentence kind of is like, this is very much like the thing from paragraph number 1, but it's a little bit different. And here's some more information, which ties everything together and then ties into the next paragraph, which says, as well as the things before, this is what we're doing. So on page 53, it illustrates how every single body paragraph ties together and how they tie together in a nice organized fashion, always to support your thesis. Remember, writing does everything with pointing. Your introduction and thesis paragraph, right? That introduction paragraph with the thesis at the bottom, it points down. It's saying, this is everything that I'm talking about. Follow this arrow. I'm going to talk about all of these things. And then every body paragraph has arrows too. It has arrows at the beginning, the focus sentence that says, this is what we're talking about in this paragraph. And then the arrow at the bottom of that paragraph, once you have fit it and use the 3 I's for the first body paragraph, it points back up saying, This is how it ties back to the thesis in number 1. And then it points back down. It's like, and now we're going into some more information in number 2, which then points down. This is what this paragraph is talking about. At the bottom of that paragraph, it points back up. This is why it's important with the thesis. And now here's the next paragraph. It's very kind of flowy. But remember, you want to make sure that everything ties together. Okay? This is not just... The best analogy that I can come up with is it's not just like you taking 2 pieces of string or 2 pieces of rope and tying a knot and saying, now they're connected. Right? It's more like when you lace your shoes. The lace is one piece. The one piece, which is your lace, is the idea, not the 2 different texts. Your argument is the one lace. And organization is you lacing that one thing back and forth that crisscross each other. Those laces, the same argument, the one lace, the same argument that you are making. Organizationally, you thread it through the holes and you make sure that they cross each other. That's the connections that we're trying to make. And that they all end up here at the top. So by the conclusion, all you have to do is tie everything together. That's what you got to do. There's no better metaphor for it. It's one idea which laces back and forth throughout the entire paper. Okay? If that doesn't make sense, feel free to email me. We can talk about it more. I'll come up with a different metaphor. But on page 53, tying everything together in your focus sentences, very helpful. This is just a really helpful section. It helps us take these different ideas that we have been working to connect and really focus them in a way that is logical and that flows. And that's what's really important. So do the reading. Watch, obviously, you're watching this video. And if you have any questions or concerns, email me. We can set up a Zoom. We can talk. We can chat on the computer, whatever you want. But if it doesn't make sense, you let me know. All right? Smart people, go do what you do.